Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my part 2 of my Audio GD Master 9 headphone amp review. It's been about 6 months since I did my first impressions, and I held off because I didn't really feel I had headphones worthy of doing a full review of this amp. So in the meantime, I acquired the Kennerton Thror, the flagship of the Kennerton line. And I've got a Hi-Fi Man Aria on hand right now, which is their $1,600 headphone that is supposed to sound almost identical to their $3,000 HE1000 V2. So I think those two headphones are gonna do pretty good at revealing what this amp is capable of. Just another look at this headphone amp, the size of it. This thing is absolutely huge. It's 17 inches wide. It's 17 inches deep, just the case alone, and then with the volume knob and the outputs and inputs sticking out the back, it's 18 inches deep. And it's about 4 inches tall. Because of, by the time you hook your cables to the back of this, especially XLR cables, you're going to need about another 3 inches, so you're going to end up needing a minimum of about 20 inches of shelf depth for this amp. It also weighs about 32 pounds, so this is a very solid and very heavy amp. Anyway, on the front you can see you've got your on-off switch, you've got your headphone preamp switch. It will only output one at a time, either the preamp outputs on the back or the headphone outputs on the front. You've got your gain control, high and low gain, and unlike the NFB1 amp, which doesn't actually change the gain, what it does is on the NFB1, it just lowers the volume control from, instead of 0 to 99, if you put it on high gain, it goes from 0 to 69. And it's putting out the same power at 69 as it would at 99 on high gain or on low gain. So it's basically just ramping up the volume faster. This here is a true volume gain control. On low gain, this has 14 decibels of gain, and on high gain, it has 20 decibels of gain, and it still goes all the way to 100 on high gain. Or goes to 99, I'm sorry, 100 steps. So anyway, then you've got your selector switch that runs through 5 inputs. And your volume knob is a relay controlled resistor ladder volume. Then you've got your headphone output, you've got your dual 3-pin XLRs, you've got your single 4-pin XLR, and you've got your standard 1/4 inch headphone jack, and all are locking, so you have to push the button to release the cables. Anyway, I'm going to show you the back of this, the inputs and outputs. And I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to show you a picture I took instead of actually unhooking all the cables and flipping this thing around. Okay, like I said, I was going to cheat on this. This is a photo I took before I actually hooked this up when I first received the amp. So as you can see, it's a true dual mono design with all the right inputs on one side, inputs and outputs. All of the left inputs and outputs on the other side. So we'll start out looking at the inputs here. You have 5 sets of inputs. You've got 2 XLR inputs, and you've got 2 single-ended RCA inputs, and then you've got input 5, which is it's called ACSS. It's sort of an exclusive to Audio GD connection. Not sure exactly how it works. It has something to do with current drive instead of voltage drive, and Audio GD claims lower noise and distortion through this. So if you have an Audio GD DAC, separate DAC, you can connect it with the 3-pin mini XLR cables. Once again, this is just the right connections. You've got your left connections over here, so there are 5 sets of inputs. And then your outputs, you've got 3 sets of outputs. You've got your single-ended RCA, and you've got 2 sets of 3-pin balanced XLR outputs. All of these are volume controlled through the preamp. This is a view of the inside of my amp. I took the cover off of it a while back, took a photo when I did. As you can see, it has 3 transformers. The 2 bigger ones on the outside are for each left and right channel, and then the center one is for the volume control and all the control functions of the amp. And as you can see, it's separated right down the middle by 2 walls, thick aluminum walls, and you've got all the left channel volume control and amp functions on one side and all the right channel on the other, so everything is completely separated in this amp. Once again, a true dual mono design. Hi everyone, this is William here with part 2 of the Audio GD Master 9 review. I've already showed you a close-up view of the front of the amp, of the rear of the amp and the connections, and I even gave you an inside view of the Master 9. And I'm here tonight to do the second part of a review I started about 6 months ago. I did a first impressions review of the Master 9, and I mentioned at the time that I had some good headphones, but nothing that I thought was of the quality that I needed to really find out what this amp was capable of. And since that time, I've got a hold of a couple more higher end headphones, and one would be the Kennerton Thrower, which in my opinion is an exceptional headphone and extremely detailed. So any amp that I've plugged these into, it's going to bring out every last detail that amp's capable of producing. So it's gonna give me a pretty good idea of what the amp can do. And then a couple weeks ago, I got a hold of the Hi-Fi Man Aria, which is on loan to me by Hi-Fi Man. Another very detailed headphone, very well balanced, very neutral in my opinion, and also very good for testing an amp to find out how well the tone is balanced and just an overall view of the amp. So I decided to finally do this review, the second part, and it's been a long time, but you know, I just wanted to touch back on this amp and let you know what I think after 6 months of time. This amp has basically been my reference amp to review all my headphones and to also base other amps and, you know, use it as a comparison with other amps. So the reason I picked this amp is, in my opinion, this is by far the most versatile amp that I've had the chance to review or even use. It's just a really good all-around amp. And the biggest part of that is that it just works with pretty much anything. This headphone amp works with everything from IEMs to the hardest to drive headphones I can find. So far that would be the Hi-Fi Man HE560, which isn't extremely inefficient, but it's a relatively hard to drive headphone that really needs a lot of power to sound good, so it's a good test of an amp's power output. But anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about the amp again. I'm not going to go into a lot of details on it because I covered a lot of that in my first review, so you can go back and take a look at that if you want more details. But anyway, I think I mentioned in the close-up of the front that it has a 100-step relay controlled resistor ladder volume, and which is really nice. It has 100 steps from 0 to 99. And it starts out by ramping up very slowly, so it works real well with super efficient headphones or IEMs where you still have real good volume control, because the volume starts out, I think by the time you get to 50, you're only at about 10% power, and you have to reach about 90 on the volume knob to be at 50% power. So at first it's a real gradual increase, and then it gets the increase becomes more with each step as you get higher up in the numbers. But anyway, once again, also it has two gains, 14 decibels and 20 decibels of gain. It's rated by Audio GD at 9 watts per channel into 40 ohms, and that is pure Class A. That would be from the balanced outputs, and from the single-ended output, it is 2.5 watts per channel into 40 watts, or into 40 ohms, and also pure Class A. The amp has a headphone output of an impedance of 1 ohm, so it shouldn't be affected by you know, the impedance of the headphones. Even super low headphone impedance, headphones with super low impedance should be well controlled by this headphone amp. The signal to noise ratio is rated by Audio GD at 130 decibels, and I don't doubt that. This is probably the quietest, one of the quietest amps I've ever heard as far as noise floor, even in high gain. I've got these old Sony DJ headphones, and these things are super efficient, like IEM efficient. They're, I think they're 112 decibels at 1 milliwatt, and even with those, I can only pick up the slightest hum from this amp. I mean, I can barely hear it. That's with no music playing, and I've got to turn the volume knob up to about 75 before I pick up any hiss at all. So I don't doubt the 130 decibel signal to noise ratio at all. They also claim a cross-channel separation of 130 decibels, which is actually extremely high. And I think that probably accounts for why the soundstage of this amp is outstanding. It just has a huge soundstage. Pretty much every headphone that I've tried with this, the soundstage has gotten wider than it was with other amps. The channel imbalance, which would be your difference between one channel to the other, and because of this being a resistor ladder volume control instead of a potentiometer, the Audio GD claims the difference between the two channels is no more than 0.05 decibels, which is 1/20th of a decibel, which is far below the threshold of hearing, so you should never be able to hear a difference in the volume between the two channels. I think I mentioned in the close-up that this amp is huge. It's 17 inches wide, 18 inches deep. That would be including the volume knob and the inputs and outputs sticking out on the back of the amp. So you're gonna need a shelf at least 20 inches deep for this amp. 24 inches would be even better by the time you have wires sticking up maybe 3 inches out of the back. And the amp also weighs 32 pounds, which is just, I mean, the thing's huge and it's heavy. It does come with a remote control, and it's a solid, I believe this is actually machined out of a solid block of aluminum. There's no screen or seams in it, just the plate that comes off the back with screws. And this thing is the heaviest remote I've ever felt. It weighs almost half a pound. And basically what you can do with it, you've got your volume up and down. The select setting mutes the amp, and the channel up and down, that adjusts your input up and down with that. So pretty handy. It's nice to be able to change the volume from across the room or mute it. So anyway, it's getting towards the sound, and that's what I wanted to really talk about in this review. The first part of my review, I touched in on the sound a little bit, but I'd only had it about a week at the time. And plus, like I said, the headphones I were using were good headphones, and the amp sounded great, but now I've got some outstanding headphones. And my opinion hasn't changed. This is an outstanding amp in my opinion. The thing that really jumps out about this amp in my opinion is the clarity, the detail, the resolution. This amp just, I've never heard another amp that is quite as clear as this. Just everything is so clear, detailed. This amp will pull out the tiniest little details in any recording you have and show you things that you've probably never seen before. The Kennerton Thrower is an extremely detailed headphone in my opinion, and the combination of the two, I mean, you're just gonna, I heard things that I've never heard before in recordings that I've owned for 20, 30 years and listened to literally hundreds of times. And the combination of the Thrower and the Master 9, I'm just hearing these little details come out of the music that, you know, just little sounds in the background, way off in the distance, things that I never noticed before. They may have been there, but now they're just more up front where, you know, they come to my attention. And like I said, I'm just hearing things I never heard before. The tone balance, I would say, I would describe it as pretty much absolutely dead neutral on this amp. I think this is probably as neutral as any amp out there as far as the balance. The bass, I would describe as deep. I would describe it as solid, controlled. It's got power and it's got punch behind it. It's not exaggerated. It's not what I would consider overly warm, but it's just right there where it should be. And it's always got power behind it. Never seems like this amp never comes up short on the power to produce strong bass. The mids, they're just super clean. Just, not the slightest bit of veil or cloudiness, or I mean, just the clarity of the mids is outstanding in my opinion. Just very, very detailed, but yet smooth. Nothing ever comes across as being harsh or edgy. The treble, very extended, goes far higher than my ears will ever hear. Just very clean, very detailed. That's where I'm really hearing things that I've never heard before, especially with the Thrower headphones, but also with the Hi-Fi Manaria. I mean, it just brings, the detail in the treble is incredible with this amp. Just, like I said, you're gonna hear every little detail that's available in the music that you're listening to. The soundstage, I think I mentioned a little earlier that the soundstage is just really wide with these headphones, and I think that once again goes back to the claimed 130 decibels of separation between the channels. That, I mean, I just hear things way, way out here, you know. Especially the Hi-Fi Manaria has a huge soundstage, and I'm just hearing things that are just, you know, sound way outside beyond the headphones. And but it's also, the soundstage is not only wide, it's got height to it. With the Hi-Fi Manaria, I'm hearing things up way, way above my head. I mean, from down here all the way up above my head. And the Aria doesn't have the deepest soundstage, but the Kennerton Thrower does. And the Master 9 is doing a really good job with that too. I mean, I just hear a huge amount of depth of the soundstage. This thing's way off in the back of the stage. And so, yeah, I would say the soundstage is definitely, without a doubt, larger in every way, wider, taller, and deeper than any other amp I've heard. Comparing this to a few other amps that I've had during the time that I've had the Master 9, probably the most similar sounding amp would be the Benchmark HPA2, which is part of my benchmark DAC1. It's combination DAC and headphone amp. And it's just a very clean, very detailed, zero distortion, very neutral amp. And I always enjoyed it, and it was my primary amp for years. The Master 9 sounds a lot like that, but it's basically the HPA2 on steroids. It's just everything about it is bigger. I mean, it's physically bigger, the sound is bigger, the sound stage is bigger, the power, it's like 10 times the power of the HPA2, which is rated at 1.25 watts into 32 ohms. So I mean, just this, like I said, this is like the HPA2 on steroids. It's just a perfectly clean, clear amp that's just so much bigger. Compared to the Emotiva, the A100 Bass X, which is an amp that I highly recommended, and for $229 is an outstanding amp, but it definitely has its limits. The Emotiva has several drawbacks, and that are all addressed by this amp. If a perfect version of the Emotiva came out, it would be this amp. Okay, first of all, the Emotiva has huge amounts of clean power, which this amp does also. But the problems is first of all, the Emotiva only has one input. This has 5. The Emotiva only has a pass-through. This is a preamp with 3 outputs. But the biggest difference is the Emotiva, you can either use it with or without the jumpers. Without the jumpers, it is good for efficient to medium headphones. With the jumpers, it's good for medium to hard to drive headphones, but to switch it, you've got to take the cover off, you've got to remove jumpers, put the cover back on. It's a big job. This amp, you don't ever have to do that. This amp will do everything the Emotiva will do in either the low mode or the high mode, and you don't have to mess with it. It's just a matter of pushing the button on the front. Also, the Emotiva, when it is in the high power mode with the jumpers, the volume control is very touchy. Take, say, the Hi-Fi Man Sundara. The usable volume is from about 7:30 to about 9 o'clock on the volume knob. Very small range and very touchy, where it's real hard to make small volume adjustments, where this amp, no matter if you're using an IEM or you're using an extremely hard to drive headphone, you're going to have a minimum of 30 or 40 volume clicks of adjustment. You're going to be able to adjust it pretty much like 1 decibel at a time. So, like I said, I mean, this amp would pretty much be the perfect version and of the Emotiva. I mean, it's a lot more expensive. The Emotiva is $229, this amp, and I think I forgot to mention this. It currently sells for $1,430. Plus you have shipping from China on top of that. I think to get it to the United States, I think it costs about $118 to get it here. But I mentioned in my first video that, first of all, the shipping weight is 36 pounds. And also it comes in a box that's about 20 by 20 inches by about 8 inches thick. So it's a huge box. But anyway, back to my comparison. I recently had the Wells Audio Milo, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I love that amp. The Milo is a great amp, and I'm not going to say that the Milo or the Master 9 is better, one is better than the other, because I can't really say that. They're both outstanding amps. They just have different capabilities. The Milo does have more inputs. It's a more versatile amp. The, did I say the M9? I'm not sure. I meant, if I said it wrong, the M9 has more inputs and is more versatile. The Milo is outstanding for anything from medium to hard to drive headphones. It'll drive the hardest driving headphones out there. The Milo might even have more clean power than the M9, I'm not sure. The Milo has one weak point, and that is it's not ideal for IEMs or super efficient headphones, where that's not a problem with the with the Audio GD. It's good with any headphone out there. Comparing the sound, I would say the Milo is slightly warmer, where the Audio GD is basically neutral. The Milo, I would say, is just slightly on the warm side of neutral. And the Milo, its strong point is it's got a nice, smooth kind of musicality out of it. Nice musical sound. It's relaxing, and it's never fatiguing. And compared to the Master 9, I wouldn't say the Master 9 is analytical. It's just a little bit less musical and a little bit drier of sound compared to the Milo. The Master 9, when you combine it with something super detailed like the Kennerton Thror, it's going to bring out every detail out there. It can get a little fatiguing after a while. Like I said, it's not analytical, but it can, with some recordings, it can get close. It borders on being analytical with some recordings and with some headphones. Okay, if you take a headphone like, say, the Kennerton Valley, which is a more laid back, slightly less detailed, more of a mellow sound, the M9's never gonna even approach analytical. So it depends on the headphone. With a super detailed headphone like the Thror, it can, it's sometimes, just being so detailed, that can get fatiguing after a while. Sometimes, I just want to put on something like the Valley and with a little bit more laid back sound, and if I'm going to listen to it for a long time, it's just a little more relaxing to me. So anyway, once again, I'm not saying either amp is better, the Milo or the Master 9. They're both great amps, just, depends what you're looking for. The Milo is more expensive though. The one I tested was the retail would be about $22.50 on that, so that's something else to take into consideration. As you probably know, if I didn't mention it already, the M9 is a fully balanced amp, and it has balanced inputs and fully balanced outputs, but it does have the ability to change a single-ended input into a balanced output. So you can use a DAC or CD player or whatever as an input, and even if it's single-ended RCA inputs, you will get a balanced signal from the balanced outputs on the M9. And as far as the difference, it's not a huge difference. The M9 sounds good, really good, with either the balanced or single-ended outputs. I personally prefer the balanced outputs. I think they're a little better. And the reason why is when I first got this, I didn't have any headphones with a balanced cable. So a little later I did get a balanced cable for my Hi-Fi Man HE560 and for the Kennerton Valley. And when I switched over and started using the balanced output, I noticed a little bit bigger and wider soundstage with a little more of a three-dimensional effect to it, a little bit more layering in the soundstage. And that's something that I think I forgot to mention a few minutes ago about the soundstage. Is not only is the soundstage huge with this amp, but it's also very layered, where you just don't go from like here to here with your sounds. I've heard some amps where the sound, and some headphones, where the sound is like, just kind of in the middle and out to both sides, where the M9, especially with the Kennerton Thror, it's just multiple layers of sound. I'm hearing sounds here, I'm hearing them here, here, just multiple layers, and the same thing going forward, just multiple layers. So it's outstanding in that respect. But back to my comparison of the single-ended output to the balanced. The balance, to me, just the sound stage is a little larger and a little more three-dimensional, and there seems to be a little bit more detail in the upper mid-range and treble from the balanced outputs. But other than that, I mean, it's not a huge difference. I can listen to either one and they both sound great. As far as what kind of music I've run through this, I've had this for like, what, 6-7 months now. So I've run pretty much every type of music you can imagine through it, but I just wanted to give you a quick example, you know, because I mean, someone does a review and if they're only listening to, you know, like hip hop or only electronic or only maybe classical, you need to know what they're listening to so you can, you know, have a better idea of their evaluation. So just a few CDs I've run through this, some of the better sounding CDs I've had to, you know, do my evaluation. Fleetwood Mac, The Dance, Natalie Merchant, Tiger Lily, Sarah McLachlan, Stumbling Towards Ecstasy. You probably noticed by now I like female vocals and acoustical music. Anyway, Nora Jones, It's Not Too Late. Some Tchaikovsky for my orchestral music. Steely Dan, Aja. Exceptional recording, but I'm sure most of you know that. Some Dire Straits. Some Cranberries, some Tori Amos, once again female vocals, a lot of piano music, some REM, and some Paul Simon, but that's just a small sample. I mean, I've probably run a couple hundred CDs through this amp, and I've never come across any music that it didn't completely take control and handle it and bring out every detail. So once again, I would mention this early. I would say the really strong point of this amp is its versatility. It just works with pretty much any headphone, pretty much any type of music. It has plenty of power for the hardest to drive headphones. It's quiet enough for everything down to IEMs. It's also, oh, what was I gonna say? It's just, oh, and it has a power that you can EQ your music pretty heavily too. I mean, if you wanna add a bunch of bass, I've got the Shit Loki 4-band EQ. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can bump the bass up as high as you want. This amp's gonna never run out of power to, you know, make the bass sound good. So, that would basically be the good points. Is there any bad points to this amp? Like I said, I've had this 6 or 7 months, and the only flaw that I could find with this amp, and the main reason it's not going to be right for everyone, is just pretty much its physical size. Like I said, you're going to need a shelf about 20 to 24 inches deep for this headphone amp. And it's 17 inches wide and 4 inches tall. This amp, I mean, you could call it a desktop amp, but it's going to take up half your desk. So, also puts out a fair amount of heat. It's a full Class A amp. It doesn't get hot, but I would say I've actually measured it, and the top of it after it's been on for maybe an hour probably reaches about 108 to 110 degrees. So I mean, you're never going to get burnt on it or anything like that. It's not going to be a fire hazard, but it needs a little bit of breathing room, and it does get warm. So yeah, it's really large. It weighs 32 pounds. If that's an issue, you know, I mean, if you want to put it up on a top shelf or something, that might be a problem too. But so basically, if the size and weight of this thing doesn't bother you, I highly recommend it. For $1,430, I don't think you can beat this amp. But anyway, one more. point that I wanted to mention. I guess this would fall under the bad points. And the feet on it are aluminum. And if you want to stack it on top of something else, you know, a DAC or something like that, say you get the matching DAC, you're probably going to want to slip like some little rubber pads or something in between the two so it doesn't scratch up the top of your other amp. Or if, you know, you're putting it on a, you know, really nice wood desk or something like that, same thing. I would throw some rubber pads underneath the feet because they are aluminum. But other than that, yeah, hey, I can't recommend this thing enough. It's a great amp, and like I said, probably the most versatile amp I've ever heard. Extreme detail, clarity, and if that's what you're looking for, I highly recommend it. I do know I've heard some issues about GD, audio GD. Someone did do some measurements on one of their cheaper amps and said it didn't measure real well, but there are some reasons for that. And number one, I believe the amp that had been tested, it was, I don't think it had any analog inputs. It had a built-in DAC, and they did go through the DAC. They put a digital source in, so not only were they measuring the headphone amp, but they're measuring the DAC also. But the audio GD amps, my understanding is they are a non-feedback design, and I really don't know all the details about that. I'm not going to try to get into some I don't understand. But my understanding is that with no feedback, the amps don't measure as well, but apparently to most people they sound better. So, you know, like I said, I just think the clarity and resolution of this amp is outstanding. So even if I've never seen measurements on this amp, I don't have the means to measure it, so I can't tell you if it measures perfectly, but to me the sound is, like I said, I compared it to the Benchmark HPA2, which is an amp that measures exceptionally. And to me, this sounds very much like that, but just bigger, bolder, and like I said, on steroids. So I really don't think, even if it does measure not perfectly, I don't really think that's an issue. The other small problem is you have to order it directly from China. And I explained that in my first video that, that from the time I ordered it to the time it was sitting on my front porch was only 10 days. So getting it from China doesn't seem to be an issue. They shipped it in about 4 days, and it took about 6 days to get here to the mid-US from China. So anyway, I didn't see a problem there. So I'm going to wrap this up. Once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and if you got anything out of this video, if it helped you, please give me a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I'd love to have you all join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. Thank you.